Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo. Then we can be assured that other nations will not treat America with respect, the respect that we deserve.
What is up, people of the internet? It is me, Real American Politics, back in with a new video, and today we're going to be discussing a very interesting topic that people have been kind of, discussing a little bit here and there, but quite frankly, should be one of the bigger topics for 2022. I am, of course, talking about the Senate race in Georgia. Now, I know it's not as interesting as, the crapshoot that's happening in, say, like Pennsylvania, Ohio, etc. But Georgia is one of those states where I personally think, outside of like Ohio and Pennsylvania for the primaries, I personally think this is should be one of the most talked about races in the entire country. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be the most interesting, but regarding the future of the state, this may be the most important election Georgia has ever faced for its future. Now, I know the governorship in Georgia is going to be, an interesting race in itself, but quite frankly, I don't care. We all know that Brian Kemp or David Perdue is going to beat Stacey Abrams. The Walrus is going to lose by like 2 to 3 at least percentage points. But I'm more interested in a federal race in Georgia, and that's what we got here for this Senate election. Now, before we continue with today's video, I hope you enjoy these type of videos. If you do, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, hit the little bell, and yes. Now, before I forget, reminder, we're trying to hit 10,000 subscribers before May 1st. If we accomplish that, the merch store will be released. So, yeah, subscribe, share with your friends, all that good stuff, and, yeah. So, let's get right into it. So, Georgia, for years, has been trending Democrat ever since even 2008. Since 2008, when you account for the national environment, how the nation swung, all that stuff, it has trended nearly every single cycle. But it was mostly, really seen in 2016 and 2020, how much has shifted to the left. And for years, people have been worrying that, oh, Georgia's going blue. It's over for Georgia. It's a safe blue state. It's turning to Virginia. Well, after looking more into the data, looking at what's been happening in Georgia, I'm starting to wonder if this cycle is the cycle where Republicans buck the trend at a federal level for a Senate race. Yes, for president, I don't know. But for a Senate election like this, right, this could be the time that Republicans buck that trend and, slow down the horses about a safe Georgia or some crazy nonsense like that. And, yeah, that may seem crazy, but let's go down to the polling for this race. And again, polling is, polling. It's not going to be perfect, but there has been a clear trend. Look at this. Herschel Walker back in, 2021, he was losing, in quotations, losing these polls by 4, 5, 6 percentage points. Now, that may seem awful on paper, but again, that's 2 polls that show that. The other 2 either had, Walker up by 2 or down by 2. So let's just say they had him down by around 3 or 4 points. Well, ever since then, in every single poll in 2022, it's been a victory for Walker. 2 of them showing a 3 and 4 point victory for Walker, respectively. Now, why is this a bad sign for Democrats? I mean, this is a blue wave, or red wave year, not blue wave year. This is why it's important. Does everybody remember how much Walker won the race in 2021? Now, again, some of the stuff that's been coming out of Georgia the past couple months have been interesting, to say the least. But even so, Walker, or the Warlock himself, won this race by 2 percentage points. Right here, you do some basic math, it seems like Walker is winning this race by around 2 to 3 points. That alone is a 5-point shift towards the right. Now, you may be saying to yourself, oh, well, the generic ballots shift, 6, 7, possibly 8 points to the right. That would mean it would trend Democratic by like 3 or 4 points. Not necessarily. Now, people, all right, I know people like to say, oh, well, you see here, back in, 2014, a state's trended like 30 points Democrat or something crazy like that. Here's my issue. For Senate elections and for governorships, I have looked into a lot of data, all that stuff. I would say this, for every 2 points that the generic ballot shifted to the right or to the left, that would mean a state should shift around a point that direction. So let's say, Walker, won this race by around 4 or 5 points. That means he won the state of Georgia by around 7 points. If the generic ballot shifted by 7 points, doing some basic math, that would mean that Walker would have actually made the state trend Republican in 2022. Again, it may not seem the greatest calculation on paper, but when you really think about it, yeah, that's about what you would expect, around a 2-point shift for every 1 point for a state. So that would mean, with that in basic math, Walker would make the state of Georgia trend Republican in 2022. But that's not all. People have seemingly forgotten this happened in 2018. Brian Kemp, who by the way has been a big fat disappointment, he could have been the DeSantis of the Republican Party, but he botched it. He won this race by around 1.5 points. While in 2014, Nathan Deal won this race by around, let's just round up to 7 points. So it shifted around 6.5 points to the left. But you do some basic math here. Alright, the generic ballot shifted, I think, like 14 points to the left. Do some basic math. The state of Georgia should have trended, or shifted 7 points left. Here, it shifted around 6 points to the left. Do some basic math. That means it trended a point in 2018 in a blue wave year with one of the strongest candidates Democrats have ever run in the state of Georgia. You're starting to notice some parallels with Georgia. Now, I know people are going to say, but 2021, look at this. Look at this result here. The Warlock won by 2 points. Here is the disclaimer with that. The national environment at that time was like D+8. Let's be real here. None of the Republican voters were voting at all. They did not give a rat's ass about this race at all. They just sat home. They sat home, and people blame Trump for it. It's not Trump's fault. If these idiotic Senate candidates, Republicans, let him campaign in Georgia, this is knowledge, by the way, that I do know. They prevented him from doing multiple rallies in Georgia. They also, didn't run on election integrity. Look, you could have bullshitted everybody about it. But if you would have ran it like, hey, we're going to make sure the mess that happened in 2020, whether it was the F word or not, either way, we're going to make sure that crap never happens again. That mess happens again. The voters would have came out in droves. But you know why they lost this race? Central Georgia. Central in this part of Georgia. Southwestern Georgia. Let's look at, Wilkinson County. Loeffler got around, 2,300 votes. The Warlock around 1,900 votes. Here, Trump got almost 2,700 votes. Biden around 2,100 votes. That means Democrats dropped off by 100 votes or so. At the same time, Loeffler dropped off by like 300 votes. In a county that's essentially, close to 50-50. You see why they lost this race. It wasn't because, the Linwood people. No, it was working people in central and southwestern Georgia. I mean, go look at this. Let's just look for, Stewart County. I'm pretty sure this is a county. Warlock around 1,100 votes. Here, Biden around 1,100 votes. Look at this Loeffler. She dropped by around 120. It's like, how? This is why Democrats won this race, and this is why the results in 2021 are so misleading. If Republican working class voters did show up, like they did in the northern half of the state, again, you look at the shift map, the northern half of the state where Trump did his rallies, that's where they came out in. The central part of the state, they told them to go F themselves. And you see it here. If Trump was allowed to do multiple rallies in the state of Georgia, this would have been won by Republicans, right? This was just a bad national environment at the time, an awful Senate candidate in Loeffler that costed them this race. Also, Mitch McConnell being a dumbass, and multiple other things. So the fact that Warlock only won this race by 2, that's actually kind of a disappointment when you look at it. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of Republican voters that just sat home. they didn't show up at all. If just, let's see here, 100,000 of them showed up, Leffler would have won this race. So would David Perdue. That's why they lost this race. But also, we all know Warlock's vote total, this may be getting skimmed down a little bit. Now, again, I'm not saying the F word. I'm just saying for a fact, hey, Democrats were freaking out a lot about this, that Georgia removed around 100,000 voters from the rolls. I'm not alleging the F word or anything like that, but suddenly Democrats, were like, shit, this is not good for Georgia. That makes you wonder, like, okay, 100,000, let's say, these voters, not saying the F word, I'm just saying that these were voters that were not on the voter rolls, or that were on the voter rolls that shouldn't have been. They didn't vote for Warlock. Let's just say all of them did. Let's just say 100,000 of them did. Leffler would have won. Again, I'm not alleging the F word. I'm just saying all these factors included, Democrats should have won these races by at least 3 points. I mean, that's just what it is. It was just a bad national environment at the time for the Republicans. And since then, it's really flipped. I mean, it's gotten bad for Democrats. So with all this in mind, I do firmly believe that Democrats are going to lose the Senate race by like 5 or 6 points. As of now, I think it's going to shift around 7 points. With the basic math we did earlier with the generic ballot, that means it's going to trend a couple points. It's a matter of how much. But even if it trends like a point Republican, that is a huge win for the state of Georgia, holding back, my blue Georgia people for at least another couple cycles or so. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, hit the little bell, and yes, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you guys in the next video. Godspeed to all of you.